computers are born. Resistance is futile. Your life as it has been is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
No, we will not service Washington.
Mr. Worf, fire.
Well, welcome to this week's edition of Renegade Ramblers Radio. I'm one of your hosts. This is Bailey, and we have Jeff. Jeff, how was your weekend, my friend?
Another wonderful weekend working in the pits. But outside of that, very nice. It's been very warm up here. I can't believe it. It's January, and we're nearly 60 degrees in upstate Pennsylvania. Pretty amazing. But this is the Rambler, Jeff Johnson. Welcome to tonight's Renegade Ramblers Radio, where renegade thinking is always outside of the box.
All right, Jeff.
We ready to get right into it, Daniel? Or
yeah.
You have something else you want?
Yeah, I was going to say that's good. And you go ahead and get started here.
All right. Well, folks, tonight we're going to start a new little part of our show. We're going to call it Rants and Rambles. And it's going to be our monologue. So, Daniel, why don't you start us off with your rant for January 22nd, 2017?
Okay, well, I'm going to play a little clip here. And I think you've all heard this clip before, but I'm going to pause it and start it and scream a little bit probably. So here we go.
Let me ask you this question. Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
I would not use that term.
Well, let me describe the situation in Aleppo, and perhaps that will help you reach that conclusion. In Aleppo, Mr. Putin has directed his military to conduct a devastating campaign as targeted schools.
In Aleppo, the terrorists, yes, they're terrorists, that we funded via the CIA also destroyed Aleppo. But let's continue listening here.
Markets, not just assisted the Syrians in doing it. His military has targeted schools and markets and other civilian infrastructure. It's resulted in the death of thousands of civilians. This is not the first time Mr. Putin is involved in campaigns of this kind.
It's not the first time we've participated in things of this kind either.
Back when he was just appointed prime minister before he was elected, and I'm sure you're aware of that period of time, there was a series of bombings, and they blamed it on the Chechens. And Mr. Putin personally said that he would punish them, and so he ordered the Air Force to bomb the Chechen capital of Grozny. They used Scud missiles to hit hospitals, the city's main outdoor market, packed with shoppers. 137 people died instantly. They used thermobaric and fuel-air explosive bombs. These are the bombs that ignite, and they burn the air breathed in by people who are hiding in basements. They used cluster munitions.
Yeah, it wouldn't have anything to do with all the weapons we've given to the Saudis to bomb the Yemenis, would it?
He used battlefield weapons against civilians. And when it was all said and done, an estimated 300,000 civilians were killed, and the city was completely destroyed. By the way, there's credible body of reporting, open source and other, that this was all those bombings were part of a black flag operation on the part of the FSB. And if you want to know the motivation, here's what it is. Putin's approval ratings before the attacks against the Chechens was at 31%. By mid-August of that year, it was at 78% in just 3 months. So based on all this information, what's publicly in the record about what's happened in Aleppo and the Russian military, you are still not prepared to say that Vladimir Putin and his military have violated the rules of war and have conducted war crimes in Aleppo.
Now, before we play Tillerson here, this is Marco Rubio basically interrogating Tillerson on why won't you call Putin a war criminal? Even though everything he accuses Putin of doing, we ourselves have done. We bombed funerals, which is against Geneva Convention, and it's against the UN Charter. We commit military exercises in countries where we're not welcome without declarations of war, which is also a war crime forbidden by the Geneva Convention and the UN Charter. We Oh, let's see what else. We bombed weddings. We opened fire on a hospital and all but leveled it because we said there was terrorists there, even though Doctors Without Borders that was operating inside the hospital said there was no terrorists in the hospital. And what was our reply? Oops. There was no call for war crimes. The Congress didn't call for war crimes. Russia didn't call for war crimes. But we'll get on our high horse and call Russia, who was taking out terrorists that went into a school and raped little girls and killed the entire school. We'll call them war criminals. Is Rubio off his freaking rocker or what? Here's what Tillerson had to say.
Those are very, very serious charges to make, and I would want to have much more information before reaching a conclusion. I understand there's a body of record in the public domain. I'm sure there's a body of record in the classified domain. And I think in order to deal with a serious question like this,
we can't get into the classified domain because we might have to discover that we were funding the people that Russia had to go in and take out. No, but that doesn't matter here to Mr. Rubio, who knows what the classified records say. He's going to dismiss this and tell Mr. Tillerson to just go back to whatever CNN has to say on the matter.
In the public domain, the videos and the pictures are there.
Fully informed before advising the president.
Well, I encourage you. There's so much of it. There is so much information out there about what's happened in Aleppo, leaving the Chechen issue aside. What happened there is clearly documented as well. There's so much information out there. It should not be hard to say that Vladimir Putin's military has conducted war crimes in Aleppo, because it is never acceptable, you would agree, for a military to specifically target civilians, which is what's happened there through the Russian military.
Again, Rubio, we target civilians. We don't give a flying hoot. But we're going to criticize Russia because we have to get into a war with Russia. We have to get into a war with Russia so bad because the military-industrial complex needs a war. They need a world war to fund their freaking budget.
And, I find it discouraging, your inability to cite that, which I think is globally accepted.
I find it really disturbing that Rubio here won't come out and admit that he's in bed with the military-industrial complex, even though it should be pretty self-evident. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, again, I agree with you on this because we have been in undeclared wars now for the last, it's 2017. So since 2002, I think we invaded Afghanistan, correct? So it's been about 15 years, 16 years. We've been in every country around the world bombing. We're in every country around the world just about with bases, but we're bombing. How many countries did we say the other day? About 8 or 9. We dropped 26,000 bombs last year. I mean, give me a break. And about $1 million pop on those bombs. So 26,000 millions spent on bombs to bomb countries we're not even at war at. And as far as I can remember, that is a war crime. When you're bombing people in a country you're not at war with, that is a war crime.
Well, the last I checked, that was against the Geneva Convention. You're operating in another country without a declared war, which is against the UN Charter. You have no permission to be there by the UN Security Council, which, again, is against the UN Charter. I mean, I'm no fan of the UN Charter, but if we're going to be members of it, don't you think we should at least abide by it?
You would think. But, again, I don't want to be a part of it at all anyway, so we'll see where that goes. But, yeah, we are hypocrites at best in this whole thing. Putin is on the right side of this war. He's killing the ISIS people, and we're arming the ISIS people. Now, in Afghanistan, we're killing the ISIS people. So, I don't know. I'm kind of a little confused here. Which side of this war are we on? Oh, I know. Raytheon's side of the war.
Oh, yes. There's drift bombs. We got to have more drift bombs being made. Well, that was my rant for tonight, Jeff. Do you have a rant?
I have a ramble.
Oh yeah, I have the rants. You have the
You have the
rambles.
rants. I have the rambles. What in the wide world of sports has happened to the media industrial complex? We have known for years that the media elites have not reported news, but were propaganda arms of the national government elites. Last year has brought the media collusion into sharp focus, and flyover America has left them in droves. So what caused this collapse of big media? The past year was historic in so many ways. Brexit, Italy defeating pro-EU constitution changes, Austria electing an anti-EU prime minister, Donald Trump becoming the 45th president of these United States. What do any of these have to do with the other? The media and the defeat of the ruling elites. Last year, the media continually informed us how all the above were going to lose, and lose big. They published poll after poll as proof of their assertion. In years past, this strategy has worked without fail. Starting in June with Brexit, each of these defied the polls and won the day. How could this possibly be? All of us commenters tuned out the media elite. We overlooked the elephant in the room. The discontent over the disconnect of the ruling elites. Whether it is in London, Rome, Vienna, or Washington, D.C., the rulers have lost touch with reality. They live in their ivory towers and steal trillions from all of us plebes, never understanding that we are tapped out. They have regulated and taxed jobs away. They spend the money they stole from us and then borrow hundreds of millions of dollars more to spend more. They have brought almost every government in the world to the brink of economic collapse. The national, certainly not federal government, has amassed nearly $20 trillion in debt. Are they proposing cuts in spending? Heck no. The House and the Senate both propose budgets that will continue to add to that debt total. They will not willingly give up the $4 trillion per year gravy train. So what were the stories that made Flyover America run away from the media stooges? The media trotted out continuous lines of women that accused Trump of some misdeed or another, and they all were proven false later. There is a fable about a little boy who cried wolf. Well, we were treated to the media that cried Trump. Just as in the fable, the media elites were eaten by the big bad Trump. Donald Trump tore the stories apart and showed the media elites to be liars. The hoi polloi tuned each ensuing report out. Next, the media glossed over the real stories that the people wanted to hear. The people went to internet news to get the story. So what stories did the little people want to know about? Easy. The Clintons. The Clintons were a comedy of errors. The media barely gave any time to the emails. When they did, they tried to cover them in ways that made light of them. FBI Director James Comey gave them what they needed. Nothing to see here. Move along. The problem was that the masses did not believe Comey or the media elite. The hue and cry was great, but the story would have died had it not been for a new big story, Renegade. It brought back to the surface the story that we all knew was a big deal. The media elite to this day have devoted nearly zero effort to bring the public this big story. In the early hours of the 9th of November 2017, the Brexit tsunami crossed the pond and washed ashore. Trump was elected the 45th president. What was the media response in the ensuing days? Let's all work with President-elect Trump and make America great again, right? No. The Russians did it. The ruling elite and their media cronies offered a story of Russian interference in our elections. The problem was they offered no proof. When us little people did not respond to this news, they gave Trump the fait accompli. The Russians have dirt on Mr. Trump. Trump must resign today. Yeah, you guessed it. It was a made-up story. The ruling and media elites made their big play, and they fell flat on their faces. The citizens of the states are not the idiots that the media and the ruling elites think us to be. On January 11, 2017, Trump drove the final nail in the media elite coffin. During the interview, he called CNN, and by implication all media elites, fake news. Will they be able to defibrillate the dead media? They will not revive the media elites as long as we refuse to be their dupes ever again. You can comment on my monologue today at blatheringrambler.wordpress.com. You can comment at blatheringrambler@wordpress.com. Any comments on that, Daniel?
No, you hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. It is time for our first break, and then we have to introduce our guest for tonight.
All right. Well, folks, you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where renegade thinking is always outside of the box.
Gentlemen, thanks for inviting me. My name's Sean Outlaw.
Washington, D.C.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. You must be cautious.
When you absolutely have to deal with the scum and villainy in Washington, D.C., be cautious and listen to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where renegade thinking is always outside of the box.
Well, this is Renegade Ramblers Radio. We're thinking outside the box is a good thing. Now we have our guest tonight, and we have to play his intro music that Jeff here, the Rambler, so graciously did. So here we go.
Sean Hoffine, host of Brushfires of Freedom, KVOI, 10:30 a.m., Tucson, Arizona. Sean is your favorite peace-loving hippie with a pit bull and a Barrett.
Gentlemen, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine, sir.
All right. From an undisclosed location in southern Arizona, thanks for inviting me to Renegade Ramblers Radio. Jeff Daniel, how are you today, young man?
We're doing great. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate that. For the audience, most of you guys don't know me. Some of you do. I'm a guy who absolutely believes two things. Well, actually, three. Our personal protection is our personal responsibility. You subcontract that away to anybody is a perfect admission that you will voluntarily step into a rail car. I also believe that each and every generation must necessarily and probably violently fight for its own freedom. The third thing is taxation is theft. No more, no less. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really do appreciate it.
So did you have a little rant that you wanted to share with us about something?
Oh,
A ramble?
I can do that. I can do the brush fires of freedom, Randall. I live in Arizona. For everybody that doesn't know me, I have a small show here, and sometimes I like to just bring out government insanity. In Arizona, our legislature is in session right now, which means if they walk into those hallowed halls, they must write more laws to make you free, right? SB 1001 spells out that somebody that uses reasonable force, if they see a pet or a child in a car in Arizona, you guys are in the north and I'm in the south, it's 116 degrees outside, and you see a blue baby in the back of the car, the Arizona legislature has actually decided they would make it legal for you to moral and ethically break the freaking window out and save the baby or the pet. Now, of course, the Arizona legislature doesn't believe that you have the aptitude to actually figure out that it would be okay to do that. You have to first contact law enforcement or animal control before you break the window. I mean, we know we're not grown up. We're not carrying a swinging set and a welding hammer. We wouldn't know to break the window out and save the baby or the pet. You first must dial 911 or your animal control. I guess you're going to Google that. I don't know. But they say after you dial your appropriate enforcement agency, you can then act like a citizen of this collection of states, and you can, with their permission, after they've written a law, you can actually do something to help a helpless pet or a child not die in a car. That I've done the testing here. It's 185 degrees in my little black truck. That's what I put up with down here. I don't know. Do you guys have laws like that up there?
Oh, we are much worse than you, my friend.
Yeah. It's we live in the regulation and law capital of the world. No, I take that back. New York State and California probably win that, but Pennsylvania's catching up quickly.
But it would not surprise me if somewhere on the Pennsylvania books, not only would you have to call, but if the kid somehow expires while you're on the phone with law enforcement to get permission to break the glass, somehow you would end up being charged with manslaughter for not knowing to break the glass and get the kid out. Even though the law would say you have to call them first.
Yeah, this to me, unfortunately, this is the kind of insanity I see every day, because we elect, rather than what we should call budget makers, we elect lawmakers. And for them to come back to their little district that they got elected in, they must necessarily pass laws so they can come back and say, look what I did to make you free. And the simple, there's a thesis. I distill this down to the most simple of things. The opposite of freedom, it's not slavery, it's law. If they pass a law, you are not more free. I almost promise you that to a T. Retract the law, you could be free. Pass one, I don't call it freedom, guys.
Well, also, one of my biggest pet peeves, and you kind of almost touched on it, is this whole notion that we are taxpayers. Oh my gosh, I hate it when somebody says, well, us taxpayers, what? I mean, really?
Jeff, it's your civic duty now. Really? You have to pay taxes and you have to vote. It's your civic duty. If you don't do that, man, you can't complain.
Well, I'm not a taxpayer. I'm a citizen. And not only that, I'm sovereign. They work for me. But no, we're a taxpayer. We reduce ourselves to this little revenue source for the government. I mean, oh man, let's not go there, because that will just be a new rant. So you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio, and our guest tonight is Sean Hoffheim, host of Brush Fires of Freedom from Tucson, Arizona. Let's move on. Sean, we started doing a little, there we go. We started doing the Prepper Corner, if you want to call it that. I hate calling it a Prepper Corner, because we're not preppers. We're just...
I don't know if you heard that.
I certainly did. I was wondering. Okay. Anyway, we have a Prepper Corner. A couple of weeks ago, Daniel and I were talking about volunteer policing, and I was going to get into volunteer fire departments tonight, but I'm going to kind of bypass that. I'm going to get right kind of the meat and potatoes where we were going to go with this. We had talked before about communities, and we need to, as communities, whether you call them, there's all kinds of organizations out there, and they all have a different name for what we're going to discuss. Some call them CPTs, community preparedness teams. Some call them CERTs, community emergency response teams. Some call them community response teams. No matter what it is, it really comes down to communities, and we talked the other night about thinking small. And as communities, we need to start thinking small and governing ourselves, whether it's medical services. And okay, so I'll go right to here and explain these CPTs, CRTs, whatever you want to call them. They fall into 4 categories. You have security, you have medical, you have comms, and you have engineering. You have people that do the policing, volunteer policing. So as a community, you're all working together to provide security. And then you have people that are EMTs and paramedics, and you have nurses and doctors that are your friends and your neighbors that provide medical. And then you have comms. Everyone around has people that do ham radio. Then everyone has friends that make things work. And speaking of people that make things work, that's what you do. Is that correct, Sean?
No, that's exactly what I do. I mean, I'm a guy. I'm a fixer-upper guy. I understand how. I'm a mechanical guy. I weld. I do. That's my skill set. I'm in a very specialized business. I move heavy things for other people. But in that business, we've learned a lot of different skill sets. We must be able to fix our trucks, fix our forklifts. In other words, fixing mechanical equipment's going to become, if what I think is coming to fruition, getting older things to work is going to become important. Whether it's a financial thing or an EMP, making something work is very important. I'm not a guy, I can suture probably myself. I wouldn't do it to someone else. But everybody needs to bring a skill, which we used to teach in high school, into this game. You guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was during my ramble. I touched on a little bit. Is about just about every country in the world now is on the brink of a financial collapse. And quite honestly, it's going to take, if it was the United States, if we had a financial collapse here, we're going to drag every one of those other countries down. They're all going to have a collapse. If we would collapse, I don't know if one out there would cause it, but if 2 or 3 of those collapsed, these economies out there, I think it would start a domino effect. Certainly, if the United States goes, we're that first domino in that little chain. We would have a collapse here. We're going to drag everyone else with us. And so this whole thing about community is why it's very important, is that we need to start working together with our friends, our families, our neighbors to develop community. And if up here, I deal with a lot of guys that are these bunker types. We have the bunker mentality. I got my stuff. If you try to come and get it, I'll take care of you. Well, if things go bad, like if we had a collapse of the economy, or if we had a EMP or whatever, I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is. If you don't have friends, family, and neighbors, when these cities collapse, those people are going to start moving out into the burbs and then into the countryside looking for resources, because the resources are going to be used up really quick in the cities. And so if you're by yourself, those 40 guys that came out of the city, they're going to get your stuff. You're going to lose. But if you have friends and family and you have comms and you get a hold of them and you have 100 neighbors that all show up with their guns, you're going to drive those 40 guys off. So that's the whole thing about security, working together, medical, communications, and people that make things work. And that's the whole point of this discussion today, is working together with community.
I fall back to, I always say, family, community, and church. If you can take care of those 3 things, you're ahead of about 90% of the people.
Now, Sean,
you're probably ahead of about 95% of the people anymore. Most people don't even know who their next door neighbor is.
You are correct. And that's troubling, because we used to grow up in a community where when things worked, we knew everybody around us. We went to the family or whatever, the corner bar. We knew our neighbors' kids.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only 32. My parents used to let me just go to the park and play with the neighborhood kids. We knew where everybody lived. I mean, granted, we lived in a trailer park at the time, but we knew who the corner was. The corner lived 2 doors down. We knew who the local cop was in the neighborhood. We knew where everything was.
I think we lost Sean. I'm pretty sure we lost him. I think we lost you there for a bit, Sean.
How about that?
Yeah, we can
That's
hear you
much
now. Your
better.
phone was
Now we got you
vibrating.
back.
How about that?
We were talking.
There, sorry about that.
We were talking last night, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to back up a little bit because we lost you. We were talking last night about how you go about meeting your neighbors. Can you tell us that story again? Because that was a really great story. I mean, it's something that maybe some of our listeners would like to. I mean, once they hear it, maybe they'll start doing it.
Well, I go to we have a thing here because I'm in Arizona. I've got a special deal here. I'm very close to Nogales, and they have a produce thing that comes, a great big truck, full size semi truck, 48-foot trailer comes, unloads a bunch of produce in a parking lot, and you can go down there and get quite a bit, 40, 50 pounds of produce for $10. Well, I go late in the day when they're almost done, and they basically let me fill, for the English speakers, my truck completely full of produce. I get like 65, 70 pounds of produce and fill my little truck up. When I'm coming home, if I see any garage within about 800 yards of my house open or see person, I just drive in the driveway. Now, a lot of people are suspect of me, and I get that. I'm not going to tell you. Sometimes it doesn't work out perfect in the beginning, but I just tell people, look, I was at the produce place and I got all this stuff. I think we ought to, share it with everybody because I can't. I'm a single guy. Let me give you some stuff, and I bring little fries bags or whatever, plastic bags. Tell them, hey, grab a whole bunch. And most people are suspect the first time, and that's kind of sad because I didn't grow up in a place like that. I grew up in a small town in Utah, but now every Saturday when I come home and I pull up to people's places, they're like, you're a really nice guy. Why do you do that? I go, because I want to know everybody. I want to know everybody in my community. And I know it sounds very unusual, but this is just going back to the life we used to live as Americans or whatever, citizens of our state, I should say. I apologize. I take that back. We used to know our neighbors. If it was in Green Bay, Wisconsin, or Moab, Utah, or where you guys are at in Pennsylvania, we knew who our neighbors were. We must know that if there's a problem, we've got to know our neighbors. And unfortunately, we've got to know their mindset. I'm careful how I play games or how I play with people, but I also do a lot of canning. And then when I can stuff, I go and take it with me, and I give stuff away. I want to be friends with my community, my close-knit community right around me. I know everybody.
Right, and that's the problem, I think, with most of Americans now, is we don't know the person next door.
No.
I mean, really. So how are we going to work together? Okay, so if we have a societal collapse, say the economy goes away and we're really in trouble, if we haven't developed these friendships or developed community, I think it's a little too late to start now. No, Daniel, don't you have a community down there that if something happens and they drive buggies around, their horse-drawn buggies, if one of their barns burned down, what would that community do?
No, I believe you're speaking of the Amish. They have a barn raising. It's normally the next day or the day after, as soon as they get the lumber and the people together to put the barn back up. And they'll have the whole thing, I believe, up within a day, maybe 2. And they don't really leave until it's done.
Yeah, the whole community will show up, that whole community. Now, I'm not saying we need to become Amish, and I'm not saying we need to start driving around in horse-drawn buggies. But really, when you boil it all down, they have something that the rest of us have lost. A community.
Community. I continue to say community.
Yep, we lost that. We don't have that anymore. We're so busy. And this is I was going to discuss this volunteer fire department thing, and there was this one sentence I was going to use out of this article. For my money, the root problem lies, and he's talking about why there's not volunteer firefighters. We're losing volunteer firefighters. I was a paid firefighter, then I went into law enforcement, but I'm still a volunteer. The root problem lies in our rapidly changing economy and the stresses it's put on the people in the workforce. So he's saying that because the way our economy is, and that I have to go out and bust my butt every day to eke out that living, I don't have time to do these other things. Now, there's some old timers up in Painted Post that work at Ingersoll Rand. I know them from different fire departments. I've talked to different guys, and they were telling me about in the old days, and I'm not talking that many years ago. When I say old days, probably back in the 80s, they were talking about when the fire whistle went off. Ingersoll Rand said, "See you guys later. Go put out the fire. Come back when you're done." And they never took them off the books. I mean, they paid them for the time they were gone. That was a community back then, because Ingersoll Rand knew that these guys were important to the community. Today, no way. Ingersoll Rand, no, you sit there. I need that part.
Yep. Well, and we've also got a component in this through, unfortunately, and I'm going to always fall back to taxation, and I'll tell the story of my grandpa. I made $100 a week. My grandmother never worked. I've got 6 aunts and uncles, and I grew up in Utah, so I got 7, my dad, and then 6 aunts and uncles. My grandmother never worked, but we've also been driven to consumerism, where each and every person needs 2 Lexuses, a 2,700 square foot house. There's 2 cell phones for the mom and dad. Each and every children's got a cell phone. There's $190, $200 cable bill. You got to have every single creature comfort now. I look back to the old days when you were talking about Ingersoll Rand doing that. Most moms didn't work. They were home. They wouldn't have been the ones asked to go put out the fire. They were asked to rear their children. We've done this through government. Period. End of story. When my grandpa made $100 a week in 1948, he paid $3 in taxes. How's that working out for you now?
So you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where Renegade thinking is always outside the box. And our guest tonight is Sean Hofheim from Brush Fires of Freedom. He's from Arizona, and we've been talking about community as it relates to this prepping thing, if you want to call it that, because we've lost that connection to our neighbors. And so why don't we fix the time? Do you want me to pick up on the next story, or do we want to take a break here?
It's actually time for the next break. We're about 20 seconds out. So I'll go take us out to break, and then you can bring up the next story when we come back.
Sounds great.
All right, you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where thinking outside the box is a good thing.
Prepare to attack. Prepare to attack on the count of 3. 1, 2, wait! What happened? Where are they? I don't know, sir. They must have hyperjets on that thing. And what do we got on this thing? A Cuisinart? No, sir. We'll find them, catch them. Yes, sir. Prepare ship for light speed. No, light speed is too slow. Light speed too slow? Yes, we're gonna have to go right to ludicrous speed. Ludicrous speed? Sir, we've never gone that fast before. I don't know if the ship can take it. What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken? Prepare ship! Prepare ship for ludicrous speed. Fasten all seatbelts. Seal all entrances and exits. Close all shops in the mall. Cancel the free-range circus. Secure all animals in the zoo. Give me that, you petty excuse for an officer. Now hear this. Ludicrous speed. Sir, had you better buckle up? Buckle this. Ludicrous speed. Go! What the hell was that? Spaceball 1. They've gone to Plaid.
Tired of this illegal and immoral national government running at ludicrous speed? We haven't gone plaid here at Renegade Ramblers Radio. Renegade thinking is always outside of the box.
And welcome back. This is Renegade Ramblers Radio, and we have Sean Hofheim from Brush Fires of Freedom, and we have the normal Jeff, nickname Rambler. Okay, Jeff, you had another story to touch on?
I wanted to touch on the inauguration speech of Donald Trump. I'm going to read this one. I have the transcript up, and I'm going to read a little paragraph of it. Today's ceremony, however, has special meaning because today we're not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the American people. Now, do I believe that Trump is going to transfer the power back to us? No. But, man, when's the last time, Sean or Dan, you ever can remember in an inauguration speech the incoming president say, they're going to give us back the power? Now, no, don't. I know, we have never lost it. We always have retained it. They think they have it, but they have the guns and they can force their will on us. But it's amazing to hear something like that coming out of this incoming president. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's absolutely amazing. Of course, when you ask me questions like, have you ever heard a president say this? You do realize I was born halfway through the Reagan presidency, right?
I know.
I have this really small, historical knowledge of presidents that I've lived through, and an even smaller one of actually hearing inaugural addresses. So I think I've heard two of them. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying, from Arizona, I mean, words are one thing out of a politician's mouth, and I'm one of the people that, and both of you are not going to like this. This was a willing passing of your leash to the new plantation owner. This is nothing more than a new plantation owner walking in. This goes back to the 2nd century in Bavaria, guys. Either you're in the castle or you're raising their goats and picking their produce. There is not going to be power returned to the people until we realize we have inherent rights built into us, given to us by God. And governments are instituted amongst men to protect those rights, and anything they do other than that is called mob rule.
Oh, welcome to democracy. 50% plus one vote will give everything you've earned away.
Exactly.
Well,
go ahead.
Truth be told there, Sean, I'll fill our listeners in here about something, because we discussed this at a little bit of a length last night. Would I be just you as the anarchist here?
I'm an anarcho-capitalist, but I'm also an abolitionist. I believe in abolition. I believe in the abolition of human slavery, which is what is going on right now. We are less free than the serfs in 16th century England.
Okay, well, because I would say that I'm more along the line of the libertarian. So we're not that far apart, because I believe that when you look at libertarians, there's like this range. You have the big government libertarians that Johnson and Weld were, that they just were looking to make themselves the government that would tell us how we're going to live our lives. On to the other side, I think there's some in the libertarian spectrum. I'm somewhere down towards the lower end, towards that anarchist side, because I really believe that the smallest government we can get is the best government. And there has to be some government. I mean, we have to have enough government. And this is about the only laws I think government should have. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Basically, don't commit sex crimes, and don't destroy people's property. And I think that should be about all the laws we really need. And that pretty much would handle all our problems. And just let people live their lives and just follow those 4 rules. And I think we do pretty darn well.
I would be amazed if we could follow the 10 simple rules from the Bible. And
Well,
I've got two rules, I mean, my rules are don't hit and don't steal. And without those 2 things that government threatens you with and does to you, you start realizing the whole thing won't work. If we said don't hit and don't steal, at what point can government function?
It can't.
Exactly.
It's like if you ever made it to where government would have to have 3/4 of the people to vote yes before they could raise taxes, the government could never raise taxes because there's no way 3/4 of the people would ever vote to give the government more money.
I mean, we could really go back to something else here. I mean, and as far as these taxes that are always foisted on us are basically voted on by a bunch of people that have no interest in them. They're not paying any taxes. They don't own property, so they're not stuck paying the extortion that is required by the government to continue to live on the property that you supposedly own, that they've stolen a long time ago, and they're just going to extort you yearly to live there. So these people keep voting for these people that pass these taxes on us that keep us enslaved to them in the house that they own now because they stole it from you, and you don't own it. They just pay them extortion money.
And I'm very troubled with that. I don't believe in a man that doesn't own property voting on another man's property taxes. I think that's pure and utter theft. That's pure and utter theft, and it's committing violence on another man. I don't believe in violence upon another man. I'm a what you said, I'm a peace-loving hippie. I don't believe in the commission of violence upon another man. Theft is violence to me, and I'm weird like that. I'm just unusual. I'm sorry.
Well, you should I'm the same way. I don't think we should be committing violence on it, and I really believe that we need a huge change because they've stolen our property. They've made us their slave. We serve them, and that was a great piece that you played a little while ago about at the beginning of the show with our opening that we're not going to service them anymore. Well, that's where we need to be. We need to stop servicing government. Folks, you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where Renegade thought is always outside of the box. And our special guest tonight is Sean Hoffheim, host of Brushfires of Freedom. I'm going to read one more paragraph from Trump's speech. This one here, I'm going to tell you, this was an incredible statement. I don't think I can remember. I remember Reagan because I voted. That was my first election, and I voted for him. I don't remember Reagan ever saying anything like this. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have bore the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrate in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for the struggling families across our land. We can argue the national thing, but we don't have to go there. But goodness, I mean, if he's serious about this, there might be some libertarian in Trump. And I don't believe that the fix is in Washington, so that's not where I'm going with that. But I mean, I haven't heard that in my lifetime.
But hold on a minute, Jeff. We have a newcomer in here. We got to play her intro.
Suzanne, better,
escaped from California.
Maybe intro.
If you can find her in the hinterlands, maybe you can hire the Suzanne team.
And for those of you that don't know, that's Suzanne Sherman, the Suzanne option from Veritas Radio Network. And welcome, Suzanne, to joining this merry little band we have here tonight.
Howdy, everybody.
Good evening. We got to play your theme song.
I heard
your intro song.
Can you hear me okay?
You sound wonderful.
Howdy.
All over it, Suzanne. Welcome back, Suzanne. How are you today, young lady?
Hey, we kicked it today, didn't we?
Oh, the crowd went crazy. All I care about is my sponsors, of course, and that's all that matters. Keep me on the radio so I can actually spread anarchy and freedom.
So tell the listeners who your sponsors are.
Oh, my God.
Right? Sean Hoffheim,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, Sean Hoffheim from Brushfires of Freedom, the crazy guy, the guy that walks in and just basically pulls an AR-15, a black truck in the parking lot, and starts a complete, absolute disaster. I work. A couple of guys helped me. Frontier Towing down here in Tucson, Arizona. Southwest Industrial Rigging, the company I run, and Perfection Auto Works, who actually sponsors All Day Sunday Radio in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, so you do have sponsors. I thought it was just you.
No. I mean, I'm deep in the thing. I'm hard into, and when I say hard into four figures, I'll tell you I'm hard into four figures in 9 months. But you know what? I've got a message to spread. Every time I threaten to quit, everybody tells me if I change one person, it was worth every single dollar.
So Suzanne, what did you guys discuss today? Because I was obviously at work, so I didn't get to hear it.
We kind of went over a lot of things. I think Sean was talking about the issue of the law in Arizona allowing you or releasing you of civil liability if you take action and see a child in a vehicle that's in distress because of heat. And his point was, oh, and then Charles, who was on before him, chimed in and said, well, this is a good law, blah, blah, blah. And my response to that was, I don't think there's a feel-good, we're out looking for your best interest law that Charles doesn't like. And at that point, I quoted Calvin Coolidge, who said that it's much better to get rid of bad laws than it is to enact good ones.
Well, that's kind of what he did do that earlier before you came on. And we've kind of gone far afield. We've covered everything from prepping to our anarchist friend here, so it's been a lot of fun. So what did you have? Did you have anything you wanted to share with us tonight?
Well, I'm sorry I'm late to the party. I was just going to listen in. I wasn't even going to chime in. I think where Sean and I also went on his show was talking about how the laws that we're seeing today, like I think we mentioned the CCW coming from Washington, how it is in direct contravention to the Constitution as ratified. Other than that, I'll just join in with whatever you guys are talking about.
All right. Well, actually, how about I go with this story? It's from the Express. The title of the story is Revealed the 10 Countries That Could Disappear in the Next 20 Years by Nick Guteridge. Let me see if I can get back to the beginning here. Number 10 was Spain. Number 9 was North Korea, which is that one kind of surprised me a little bit. And then number 8 was Belgium. Number 7 was China. Number 6 was Iraq. Libya. Number 4 was the Islamic State, which makes no sense. It was obviously a liberal guy. Number 3 was the United Kingdom, which we'll get to that in a second. Number 2 was the good old U.S. of A. Let me read his short little blurb, and it's very short, but the last paragraph is the important paragraph. They reference the deeply felt north-south divide between the different states of America, which has been entrenched since the Civil War, which led to the unification of the country. Obviously, doesn't know a thing, but the narrator says that Alaska and Texas are the 2 states most likely to leave the Union, but adds others could follow. They warn, here's the paragraph, many of the divisions that caused the Civil War in the United States still exist to this day. If those deep-rooted political and cultural differences within the United States are not rectified, it is possible that some states could break free within the next 20 years. And if you go back to the one Great Britain, it talks again about cultural differences. We are a massively diverse culture today. Just to give a quick reference of it, yesterday there was all these women marching in Washington demanding their right to murder babies. Good grief. I about lost my mind. I don't want. Then you have these people like in Ferguson rioting and burning places down, looting. You have people in Baltimore looting and burning things down. I'm going to tell you right now, I have nothing in common with these animals. I want nothing to do with them. And I am praying that this guy's right. In the next 20 years, that we separate from each other and I don't have to deal with these animals any longer. Okay, I'm going to grant some more, so I better shut up. So take it, Sean.
Well, problem with a guy like me, I don't do I don't do anything at all what you would call TV, media, anything. I've got three things in my life: old books, Zero Hedge, and Zero Gov. And I'll tell you, what I see out there, what little I look at out there, we have been duped. We have been duped. Like, this is the biggest theft of freedom in the American experience ever. I mean, I always say there's three of the biggest thefts of American mind control has been 9/11, 22 November, year of our Lord 1963, and this man walking into a White House that had no business even being on American soil. Each and every one, not a single musket, not a single pitchfork, and not a single torch was raised in the air. Now we're divided in a left-right paradigm, and people continue to say, that's my president, that's not my president, when what I say is I don't care who the president is. I'm going to go out and make my own lot in this country. I'm a high school educated jackass that drives trucks for a living to haul stuff around. I make my own way. I know I'm a slave. They take almost 54% of my money. But I can go do whatever I want in this country. And for these poor snowflakes and pea hat wearing people to go out there and go, oh, no, it's that guy. You know what? That guy got elected 8 years ago. And I'm going to tell you what I didn't do. That guy's not from here. I didn't carry a sign because I was working every day. I didn't run down to the Democratic National Committee place in an undisclosed place in Tucson, Arizona, and carry a sign. I was too freaking busy working. The reason I was working is because I was taught to by my.
I think we lost you again, Sean.
No,
No, he stopped.
Oh, he stopped? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where renegade thinking is always outside the box. Our guests tonight are Sean Hoffheim and Suzanne Sherman. We have to take a break. We're up against a break here. Daniel, take us away.
All right, you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio. We'll be right back after a short word from our sponsor.
Men, you are about to embark on a great crusade to stamp out runaway decency in the West. Now go do that voodoo that you do so well.
Headley and the Leviathan stamping out runaway decency in the West? Do that voodoo that you do, and listen to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where renegade thinking is always outside of the box.
It was a beautiful day. The sun beat down. I hit the radio on. I was driving. The trees went by. Me and Del were singing the little runaway. I was flying. Yeah, running down a dream that never would come to me.
Welcome back. This is Renegade Ramblers Radio. And Suzanne, you said during the break that you wanted to get in on the comments being thrown around here.
Yeah, when you're referring to an article that says that refers to the divisiveness and the causes of the war of northern aggression, and then they try and use that as a comparison to what we are seeing in our society today, it's really taking two things that are not alike and saying that they are alike. And I'll give you an example. There was certainly a source of division between the northern and southern states. However, what really caused the outbreak of hostility wasn't what is implied in that article, meaning the slave owners and the industrialists and the abolitionists in the northern states. What really caused the opening of hostilities was the imposition of the Morel Tariff and the southern states legally seceding from the Union, something they had every right to do according to the Constitution as ratified, because that was a term of that was reserved when three states said that they wanted to reserve that right to secede. When that was accepted, it applied to all of them. So when they decided to leave, which they had every right to do, Lincoln played his sleight of hand. He was able to get the southern states, I think it was South Carolina, to fire first at Fort Sumter, and that really galvanized support for the war. But this war did not start over differences in society. It started over the imposition of unfair taxation from the central government to the southern states, to the extent that it was so draconian and unfair. And then to the benefit of the northern states, when the states left, he went to war to bring them back, because several states that remained loyal to the Union were allowed to keep their slaves. So it's really a misnomer when they have this hidden distraction implying that this was divisiveness over an issue of slavery. And that's what I'm reading between the lines there. That's why that article is kind of irking me a little bit.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going towards the slavery issue anyway. It was a cultural divide.
Oh, I think that
it was an industrial north and it was a agricultural south. There was a huge in the north of the south, and the north thought that they needed to impose their will on the south, and that's exactly correct by these tariffs and stuff. And that's what really started it. But there was a cultural divide then, and there is certainly a cultural divide today, because I don't have anything in common with these liberals that want to murder babies. And I certainly don't have anything in common with these liberals that loot and burn cities because they're angry about something, or the snowflakes lost an election, so they're burning limos and breaking Starbucks windows in Washington, D.C. I have nothing in common with them, and I want nothing to do with them. There is a massive cultural divide today, and that cultural divide is what's going to tear this union apart. That was my whole point of that.
Oh, when I read articles like that, what you mentioned though, that to me is what they're getting at, and I don't think they really delve deeper into it. I agree with everything you're saying.
Right, and that's why I said a lot of that article was just plain wrong. But it was interesting that there's people out there that are noticing all these different nations. I use the N word. I'm sorry, that are going to break up. We are a union, and so we're not a nation. But this union is going to break up. I don't see how it doesn't at this point, because no matter how it breaks up, it's going to break up because, again, we have nothing in common. Boston has nothing in common with Utah any longer at all.
No, I've said frequently that if we were divided, in a geographic manner with regards to our cultural differences, I think people would already be fighting. We're just so interspersed; it hasn't started yet. Because if we were that different and segregated, but forced to stay in one quote nation, indivisible, we have some serious problems. But again, we're not having that.
Well, I'm only 11 miles from the capital, Pennsylvania, and I can guarantee you I have very little, if anything, in common with them.
Yeah, and that's me in Salt Lake City, me in Park City.
Well, see, that's the problem. Okay, everyone here that listens to the show knows I work in New York State. I work for New York State in law enforcement. There's two New York states. You got New York City, then you got the rest of the state. The rest of the state, if you look at the election map, the rest of the state, you had New York City blue, a little piece in Buffalo, and you had Albany. Those little pockets are red. Because of the population centers, they control New York. They voice their will on all the rest of that red state. Just those three little places well, New York City is not very little, but you know what I'm saying. They voice their will on the rest of the population because they can outvote them.
If I can throw something in there, when
go for it,
you got
a blank spot there. Go for it.
No, and when anybody says liberals, I get a little crazy, because okay, so you got conservatives now, and I call them neocons anymore. They're the people that sent my father into Vietnam to shoot innocent people, each and every one of them in Vietnam, and that was Lyndon Johnson. He was a neocon. We got to stop with this, please. There's either people for freedom or they're not for freedom. There's not
Amen.
Conservative and liberal. I'm sorry. I mean, it's either liberty or it's slavery, and that's the end of that. I'm sorry, but they sent people 18 years old into Vietnam, put them on M60s and doors of Hueys to shoot entire villages that they didn't know that they had done anything. Does that rhyme with Iraq? Does that rhyme with the kids that I'm dealing with here in my town that are coming home from the sandbox that had to kill people that they didn't know what they did? They looked the same as the other people. So you know what we did? We shot them. We killed them. And then when they come home, the VA throws them out like frickin' milk cows that don't give milk anymore. And if you guys, we got to stop liberal and conservative. It's this, slavery or not. Goes back to the frickin' 1860s, guys. It goes back to Bavaria. Either you're picking their corn or you're inside the castle.
Bravo.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
It's like I always say. Now, see, Pennsylvania is a commonwealth. What my saying about a commonwealth is you're either common or you're wealthy, but you're never both at the same time.
Not necessarily. You are correct there. I mean, I draw for the young people that don't know the system. I draw a circle with my chalk. I carry chalk in my pocket all the time, or soapstone. I'm a welder. I draw a circle and then I draw a square in it, and I say, "What do you think that is?" The square inside a circle. No, from the air, it's a castle inside a moat. Where you at? And they stand there and go, most people go, "Oh no, you're not in it." If you're not inside that castle, 1-mile square of swamp that they will not drain, they will fund, and they will continue to hire federal employees. I made a guy a $1,000 bet the other night. There will be more federal employees in 1 year than there are today. If I lose, charity. If I win, or however that works out. In other words, if I take your money, I'll give your money to charity. If you win, I'll give you the cash. You can go spend it on a rifle, which is what you need right now. Sorry.
That's okay. That's why we had you on here to talk about this. So, I don't know. We've kind of gone a long way around on these things, and my big thing was I think that there are opportunities for us to develop more community-based solutions. The problem is we are, again, going back to our original discussion earlier, is we are not a community any longer. The government has created a bunch of people that are either working for them as far as to pay the taxes, or they've created a group of people that are tax receivers. So in one way or the other, we're all controlled by them, whether it's because we have to work for them to pay them, or they give the money that they've stolen from us to somebody else to be their voting slave. If you want to go there.
I'll go there. I'll go there in a heartbeat. By the way, I'm just so you know, I'm the guy that has to go to Raytheon 3 times a week. I got to be careful. I'm the guy that goes to the bomb factory 3 times a week. They're my biggest customer. Government is now.
But don't get yourself out of a job here.
I don't care anymore. I'm good.
I know.
I'm good. I'm square. I'm ready to be out of a job because I don't believe it's moral for me to pay $72,000 a year to send my friends, sons and daughters to places that most Americans can't find on a map.
Right,
Quote unquote freedom.
You weren't on the show the other day when I had that story about the number of countries our Nobel Peace Laureate president, for our former president, dropped there was like 7 or 8 countries that we had no declaration of war with, and we dropped 26,171 bombs on these countries last year. And that's why I went to that Raytheon. Yeah, I know. I'm just reminding you that's why I went to that Raytheon thing. So we are spending all this money to kill people all over the world, or we're selling the arms of people to kill people all over the world. So how are ISIS and Russia and all these others the boogeyman? We were talking about that last night, about we need a boogeyman. So right now, Putin's the boogeyman. China's the boogeyman. North Korea's the boogeyman. We need to make more bombs because the boogeyman's going to get us and kill us all. Really?
I'm in Arizona. I'm totally terrified. Of course, I've got F-18s, F-15s, F-16s, and A-10s over me every day, so I'm good. Predator drones I actually called for today with the Hellfire missiles to come when I started my show. The canary in the coal mine. The canary in the coal mine is this: we live in a country we spend $71 billion with a B dollars a year on food stamps, and Russia, the people we're supposed to be scared of, their entire defense budget is $69 billion a year. Are you kidding me? And I'm supposed to be scared of those guys?
Thank you for bringing that up, because we were talking about this last night. It was just such an enjoyable conversation. We were talking about on-budget spending for the military. We spend on budget, and you can explain on budget in a second. We spend $700 billion on budget for our defense industry. Russia spends, okay, let's be really generous and say they spend $70 billion. We're spending 10 times as much as Russia. And they're not, if you put in China and everyone else, we're still outspending all of them. Like 26 countries we outspend.
Yes. Yeah. We have to, though. It's a jobs program, guys. I mean, I don't want to be mean, because I'm in it. I mean, I'm at least honest about it. I go over to Raytheon and I get a lot of money to do that. And that money turns into AR-15s and ammo and MREs and food and oats and wheats. But, you know, the government is now the employer of last result. The last country that tried this, I don't know. You guys, can you name it? Can you name the country that tried this last time?
Okay,
the employer of last result?
Well, I don't know. I was just going to say, let's see. We're going back to the George Carlin bit. Oh, what's the last person that bombed white people? Oh, it was the last white people we bombed. Germany, because they were trying to cut in our action.
You are correct, sir. You win the prize.
It's just funny. I had to go to George Carlin and try to answer the question with George Carlin, but I did a crappy job of doing George Carlin. That's
okay. No, you've got it. The last time the employer of last result was the government is 1939 to 1940 until we crashed them. 1944 Germany. You guys need to read Schindler's List, the book. Don't watch the movie. Read the book. It's horrifying. It'll make your skin crawl. What we're doing right now is very close to that. And I'm sorry if I don't want to compare to the American experience to Nazi Germany, but when a country uses every single asset in terms of people, taxes, labor, creativity, the ability to produce and think, to fight wars, they're on the wrong path.
Folks, you're listening to Renegade Ramblers Radio, where renegade thinking is always outside of the box. Our guests tonight are Sean Hoffheim from Brush Fires of Freedom out of Tucson, Arizona, and Suzanne Suzanne Option on Veritas Radio Network. Daniel, I think we must be at about an hour over over an hour at this point. How are we doing for time? Oh, okay. You just sent me a message. Thank you. Take care of what we got to do here, Daniel.
All right, that's the end of the show today. We've gone well over an hour, I do believe. But this is a Renegade Ramblers Radio. Our guests tonight were Sean Hoffine from Brush Friars of Freedom on 1080 AM down in Tucson, Arizona, and Suzanne Sherman from the Suzanne option on the Veritas Radio Network. And we will see you all next week at 8 o'clock. And since my Packers lost today, we have no reason not to be on time. So we will see you next week at 8 o'clock, or 2000, as I like to say, Eastern time. Have a nice night, a good week, and see you next weekend. Good night, all.